What do you need? What do you need? What's changed? Oh, okay. Okay, so this here is morally.
Sound check mic number one. Sound check mic number one.
Okay, we're good. We are checked out. Thank you very much.
And sound check mic number two. Sound check mic number two. Sound check mic number three. Sound check mic number three.
So we have Steve.
Yeah.
Stuart, sorry.
Yeah.
Then we have Murali.
Yeah.
Yeah. Murali then introduces speaker online.
It's actually a video.
A video, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine, and then we go to the panel. I will remain standing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I think just now. Yes, I did. That was me speaking. Lovely. Thank you for helping. Thanks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us crack on. Could I ask you to please take your seats? Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. And once again, a very good morning to you. And welcome to the IUCN Pavilion. My name is Luquessa Burak. I'm an international news anchor with the BBC, Sky News, TRT World in Turkey, Al Jazeera. Been there, done that. And here I am at is it my third or fourth COP, Murali? It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So absolutely love the work that the UNCCD is doing. And amazing launch today for incredible work that is being done. And it's all connected to this document here. So I don't have the bound copy, but I had an early draft of it. And this report means a lot, particularly for the organization. Once it's released fully, please grab it and read it. We are about to find out whether promises that were made have been met on land restoration. And bear in mind, we've all been here. It's not simply a case of yes or no, pass or fail, tick or cross. We are all very aware that when it comes to data, when it comes to the climate, things are far more nuanced than that. So we're going to hear about those nuances and why they matter when it comes to interpreting the results of what has been collated by the team. Most importantly, we're also going to learn what needs to change between now and 2030 in order to turn all these ambitions that we've been hearing into results that people, importantly, people and nature can see and benefit from, and countries can prove. People always want the data to prove. So let us begin by setting the scene. And our first speaker brings that global view of how conservation policy becomes practical action across landscapes. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stuart Manganese, who is the Deputy Director General of the IUCN, to kick open our launch. Stuart.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to stand here?
Thank you very much, Luquessa. Good morning, colleagues and partners, friends. I think every restoration commitment, global, national, subnational, whatever, really boils down to a simple, single objective. Is a piece of degraded land healthier, more productive, yielding benefits for the people who depend on it, and underpinning biodiversity that yields those benefits. Is it more resilient than it was beforehand? So 2 years ago, the IUCN's Global Restoration Commitment Database helped us understand the scale of global ambition. Countries have collectively pledged to restore more than 1 billion hectares. The new report asks the harder question, as Luquesa just eloquently preempt, was how much of that ambition can we currently document as under implementation? Again, obviously, restoration is a process. It's not degraded one day and restored the next. It is a process, but how much can we understand is substantively, meaningfully under implementation? Our assessment identifies just over 124 million hectares reported as restored since 2015, rehabilitated or under improved management. And again, I will say this is part of a process because restoration takes time, and actually reported within national and international reporting frameworks. It's equivalent to approximately just a little bit over 10% of that which was pledged. Now, I think there's a couple of things to highlight. These figures are deliberately conservative. They don't claim to capture the totality of everything that is under restoration at the minute, but rather it establishes, I think, for the first time, a comparable baseline of what the ambition is from where the action actually is taking place, and in a way that the documentation is sufficiently consistent. And that leads perhaps to the most important lesson of this report, that we face not only an implementation gap, 10, 12%, but also that we face an evidence gap. And closing the implementation gap means scaling restoration on the ground through sustainable finance, stronger delivery capacity, better integration of land use planning, but also critically having a way to consistently document this and understand it. You know the old saying, we can't manage what we can't measure. The other thing that I think this report really highlights, and I want to reference back to the discussions yesterday we had on the technical discussions under the Antalya dialogue around synergies, because this is one thing. We had 25 countries in an informal dialogue reflect on the need for synergies between the conventions and synergies really from a bottom-up perspective. And we heard the same thing multiple times about what synergies in practice, synergies between the conventions actually mean. And remember, we drew this report from databases across the 3 Rio conventions, including across the 3 Rio conventions. And one thing we heard from multiple parties was the same message that's in this report. Restoration is being measured through different systems, using different using different baselines, indicators and reporting cycles. Important information generated by projects and programs does not always reach national reporting systems. And where monitoring capacity is limited, real progress on the ground largely remains invisible. And that, I think, is a real shame, because we do know there are lots of communities, lots of individual actions that could actually feed into and present a more coherent platform, help governments steer and direct their restoration programs that we're not capturing at the minute. As we move to 2030, this really does matter. The deadlines for the Sustainable Development Goals, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and many restoration commitments are fast approaching, and credible evidence is the basis of our accountability, not only to say what we've achieved, but for better policy decisions and to improve the flow of finance and build the case for that restoration really does work and really does yield benefits, and actually to assist our forward planning. The 3 things, therefore, are critical. Number 1, we need greater alignment in restoration definitions and indicators across the international framework. Again, what we heard yesterday in the synergies discussion, we need stronger national monitoring capacity, combining field knowledge with Earth observation, geospatial information, and transparent reporting systems. And we need to connect restoration finance more closely to measurable and sustained outcomes. Again, I want to emphasize this point. There is a link between financial flows and encouraging the allocation of both public and private sector resources to being able to demonstrate that restoration really does work. The database, therefore, should not be seen as a final scorecard. It's a baseline that can help, that can become stronger as national reporting improves, methodology converges, and our data systems are better connected. Just in closing, I'd like to say that IUCN is really grateful to our fantastic partner, the G20 Global Land Initiative, for the collaboration and support in making this work possible. It really now is our collective responsibility to turn restoration commitments, and there is an appetite for that, into visible and lasting changes that really help us achieve the reversal of land degradation, conservation of biodiversity, and to combat climate change. It happens on the same piece of land. It affects the same people, and being able to bring this together into a coherent reporting system, I think really is our responsibility to help move this forward. So I would just conclude by saying that is how we think we can move from ambition to implementation, and from implementation to lasting impact. So thank you very much.
Stuart, thank you very much indeed. And just to pick up very quickly on a point you said about different monitoring capacity, different reporting systems. A couple of people have heard me say this. I'm amazed that this is still an issue. This is something I came across when I was completing my thesis in GIS and trying to bring together all the different data sets and how this data was collected. So I think it really does underscore why this is important, that it keeps cropping up and it's something that needs to be resolved. So the G20 Global Land Initiative has set a clear target. The ambition is 1 billion hectares. How do we deliver that at scale? The person to take us through that challenge is the director of the G20 Global Land Initiative, Dr. Murali Tumarakudi. Please welcome him to the stage, or you can sit down. You can sit down? Okay.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Stuart. In 2022, when I was asked to take up the task of the director of the G20 Global Land Initiative, which is an initiative set up under the Saudi Arabian presidency of the G20, I looked at the mandate, and the mandate was to achieve 50% reduction in degraded land by 2040. That, by that time, calculation was 1 billion hectares of land to be restored by 2040. So I came to Bonn, and I looked at a report prepared by the Dutch Environmental Agency, which mentioned that 1.01 billion hectares of land has already been committed to be restored by 115 member states. So I said, oh, my job is going to be very easy because all the commitments are already there to be achieved by 2030. All that I have to do is to track. I then had a chance meeting with Muniz, whom I would introduce, who is the main force behind this report, in IUCN office in Glow. And Muniz said, there are already existing 38 separate processes to track the restoration commitments and action. And one of the mandate I had was also to set up a tracking mechanism. And I said, this doesn't make sense. You already have 38, the 39th one don't make sense. So I said, Muniz, we will not set up a 39th setup. I would work with IUCN. We will together look at the numbers. Thus came the first report last year, which was about tracking the implementation commitment, an update to the Dutch report. And we got very impressive numbers. So the commitment rose from 1.01 to 1.2 billion hectares. Great number. What is also very interesting is that when you did a cumulative analysis of that, if you work with just 10 countries, you already achieved 50% of this 1.2 billion hectares. So just 10 countries out of the 197 parties, you could achieve 50% reduction on degraded land. What was even more interesting was that of the 10 countries, 5 of them were G20 members. If I recall correctly, it was Australia, China, India, Australia, etc. I don't remember the other 2 G20 countries, but with 10 countries, you could reach 50%, of which 5 were G20 countries with whom we had a direct contact and a mandate. And then we found that if you were to work with only 40 countries, 90% of all the commitment could be achieved. So even if you don't work with the remaining 100, you can still achieve 90% reduction. So I had clearly the target countries in mind. This year, we are coming with this second report of the restoration achievement, which actually turned the table and say that clearly, even though the commitment levels are extremely high, the achievements are probably 10%, which, as Stuart said, is a conservative estimate. But I will give the benefit of doubt and say it is twice that. And then we are still talking about 20% commitment towards 2030 target, not 2040 target. And now, logically speaking, if I am sitting here in 2026 and looking at 20% achievement of 1.2 billion commitment, I don't think we will meet the 2030 targets. So clearly, this is a call for action as well. As much as we find more evidence to make from 10 to probably 15 or 20%, we might accelerate in a very significant manner to reach 2030 target, maybe not by 2030, maybe 2035. And clearly, we have a much bigger challenge to reach by 2040. So, of course, it's a very happy occasion that we are able to release these numbers, but it's also an occasion for us to truly reflect and see why things are not happening the way we have planned and committed. So with these opening words, I hand it back to Lukwesa. I welcome you all to the launch of the report again and look forward to the panel.
Murali, I think you're going to introduce our key speaker today.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I already mentioned about Munishwaran. He is the project manager for this collaboration. Munish is an expert in geographical information system. He worked at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And before he joined the IUCN, he had many years of experience in India. He has a master's degree in geographical information system. And I think Munish is either joining us live from GLOW or he is as a recorded message. Thank you. Maybe we can start.
Morning, everyone. First of all, thank you all for joining us today. I am very pleased to be able to share this assessment with you all, even though I could not be there in person. This work reports a simple but important question. As global restoration ambition continues to grow, how much implementation can we actually document through reporting systems available today? This work brings together reported restoration achievements across major international frameworks to provide a clearer picture of implementation, identify where important evidence gaps remain, and consider what needs to improve as we move towards 2030. What I will share today, it's not only a set of numbers, it is also a picture of how restoration progress is being captured, where restoration systems are working well, and where stronger evidence can better support implementation, investment, and accountability. In 2024, we did a global assessment of restoration commitments. Across LDN, NDCs, NBSAPs, and Pond Challenge, countries had collectively committed around 1.2 billion hectares. 2 years later, today, we could ask the next more difficult question. How much of that ambition can we really see in the reported implementation? And for that question, this report is the answer. This Restoration Achievement Report identifies 124 million hectares of officially reported implementation. And that represents only 10% of the restoration area pledged across the commitments we assessed. And most of the documents currently comes through NBSAP and NDC reporting with additional evidence from LDN and Pond Challenge. And the activity spans from different landscapes, from forests, croplands, wetlands, and grasslands. The most important point here is this 124 million hectares should be seen as a conservative documented baseline, not as a full extent of restoration happening all around the world. Before we looking at the results, it is important to be clear about what we actually counted. For the main estimate, we have included achievements that were officially reported or government endorsed, expressed in hectares, and linked to implemented restoration, rehabilitation, or improved management. We also used a conservative approach to reduce the risk of double counting. It is also important to be clear what was not included. We did not count the activities that were only planned or proposed, or where there was not yet clear evidence of completed achievement or implementation. We also excluded the protected area designation on its own claims without a reliable figure documented in the country reports. We made these choices very simple reason. We wanted the main figure to be easy to trace, comparable across countries, and useful for policy discussion. So this report is a deliberately conservative assessment. It does not try to capture every restoration activity happening around the world, but instead it shows the progress that can currently be documented with reasonable consistency and confidence. Once we apply these criteria, we can see where the documented achievements are coming from. The largest share coming from NBSAP reporting at 56 million hectares, followed by NDC at 40 million hectares. So together, these two reporting channels account for roughly 77%. Then LDN contributes a further 20 million hectares, while the Pond Challenge accounts another 9 million hectares. Now we need to interpret these figures carefully. They do not necessarily mean that most restoration activity is happening only through biodiversity or climate programs. They show where the restoration progress is currently being reported and quantified with most clear evidence through the frameworks we assessed. This is important because the restoration can only be visible internationally when countries have systems and reporting pathways needed to capture it. When we move from the global to regional pictures, we can see the clear achievements pathways. East Asia reports 39 million hectares, followed closely by South Asia with 38 million hectares, and Sub-Saharan Africa with 23 million hectares. So together, these three regions accounts for around 80% of all the documented achievements we assessed. Other regions reports much smaller in totals, and these differences can reflect several factors. For example, the scale of restoration activity, national priorities, and how strongly restoration is monitored and reported. So we should not read the regional figures as simple ranking of restoration performance. They show us where the achievements are most visible in the evidence currently available. Now, when we compare those achievements with the original pledges, the picture becomes more revealing. For example, South Asia shows the highest proposed delivery at 40%, followed by East Asia at 35%, and several regions in Europe and Central Asia around 20%. At the same time, some regions with very large commitments show much lower documented delivery. For instance, Sub-Saharan Africa has the largest pledged area, but reported achievements represent only 5% of the commitment. And the same case with Central and South America is only below 2%. From this assessment, the key message is simple. The larger commitment does not automatically mean high documented delivery. What matters here is implementation, monitoring, and the ability to turn action on the ground into credible reported progress. So this comparison between pledges versus achievement helps us to see where the momentum is strong, where the gap between ambition and the documented deliverables. Having looked at the research, the next question is where these assessments sit along with other restoration information systems. The key point is that these resources are not competing with one another. They serve different purposes and used together can provide a more and complete picture. For example, this report sits at the accountability end of the spectrum. It uses only officially reported and government endorsed information to establish a conservative and traceable baseline. If you compare that with FIRM that provides a broader institutional layer, the FIRM database brings together structured information from different sources and can help identify additional implementation signals. Also, platforms such as Restore provides much wider visibility into project and local level activity, although the level of standardization and validation can vary. So these numbers should not simply be added together. They represent different layers of evidence. The opportunity here is to connect these layers more effectively. Official reporting for accountability, institutional aggregation for broader coverage, and open platforms for visibility and learning. When you combine this information together, they can give us more complete picture of global restoration. Now, pathways forward. This assessment identifies 4 practical barriers. Reporting systems remain fragmented, definitions are not always consistent, project level evidence is not always connected to national reporting, and monitoring capacity remains uneven. The response is therefore quite clear. We need common minimum reporting requirements. We need stronger links between national and global reporting. And we need better use of spatial evidence and metadata to improve traceability and reduce the risk of double counting. So the reporting process should not be stopped like one-time event. It should be also regular and transparent. It should allow us to see whether implementation is actually increasing as we move towards 2030. So the ultimate goal is not to create another reporting system. It is to make the system we already have to work better together. These improvements matter because restoration evidence supports several connected 2030 agendas. For CBD Target 2, better evidence can show where degraded ecosystems are under restoration and how progress changes over time. For land degradation neutrality, it can help countries demonstrate actions to avoid, reduce, and reverse land degradation. And for CBD Target 3, restoration evidence can support ecological integrity, connectivity, and effective management within and around protected and conserved areas. So across these 3 agendas, the basic needs are simpler: common definitions, comparable evidence, and connected reporting. The opportunity is here not to create more parallel reporting. It is to make existing evidence work better across these agendas so countries can understand progress more clearly and make better decisions towards 2030. And this brings me to the final message of this presentation and the assessment. So there are 3 messages I would like to leave with you. First, make progress visible. We need to know where restoration is happening and where more support is needed. Second, make evidence comparable. Common definitions and consistent reporting will help us understand progress across countries, programs with greater confidence. And third, strengthen accountability. We need to connect implementation, monitoring, and reporting more effectively. Better evidence helps us to make better decisions. It shows us where the progress is happening, where more support is needed, and where restoration ambition is turning into action on the ground. And as the discussion here at COP are making clear, restoration cannot be treated separately from wider land, biodiversity, and climate agendas. Of course, these three policy frameworks work differently, but they increasingly depend on the same underlying evidence. So we move toward 2030, restoration progress must become visible, comparable, and accountable across all landscapes, biodiversity, and climate agendas. That's my message for you. Thank you all. Morning, everyone.
So there we have it.
First of all, thank you all for joining us.
There we have it. And a report back of the findings of the IUCN report and the top lines, as we say in journalism, and the big numbers, but also the provisos within those, which is absolutely essential. So I thank all of our first speakers. 124.3 million hectares. Just a baseline. Let us continue the conversation now, please. And to guide us through a solution to some of those challenges, an approach, please welcome to the stage Madhu Rao, the chair of the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas, Chetan Kumar, the head of the Forest and Grasslands team at the IUCN, Devashri Niraulu, who is an information management expert at the UNCCD. And also, Dr. Murali, I'm going to ask you and Stuart to return to the stage, please. Now, you'll have to excuse me. Murali, as ever, has got 110 appointments. So I'm coming to you first, if that's all right, just to make sure we get some insights from you before you dash off. I'm really keen to hear. I'm going to take this out. Just bear with me. Okay, I think that's better. I'm really keen to hear, Murali, what needs to change from what you've said and what you've heard and the findings of that report and the challenges that remain. What needs to change inside of governments, but also institutions like our own here, so that national monitoring actually connects more easily with international reporting and interpretation of those key findings. What do we need to change? Do you have a microphone? Aha, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. When we received the initial figures that we are really only doing maybe 10 to 20% of the commitment, we were wondering why is that? From 2010, countries have been committing to deliver, but when it comes to action, that's not happening. And when we looked at where actually the action is happening, it's very clear to us that when there's a national legislation prompting action or mandating action, action is happening. For example, if you were to take the mining industry, for example, most mining industry have a legal commitment for restoration, so the restoration would happen. But in other sectors, there is no comparable national legislation. Luckily, in 2024, the European Union came up with a new legislation on restoration, land restoration, the restoration law. And we expect that that will start to have a positive impact on the restoration numbers. So my take is that we need a lot more national legislation and not just international commitment if restoration has to translate into action. Because national legislation would mean national budget will be provided for that. National legislation mean new programs will be initiated. National legislation mean that citizens in the country will be able to hold their governments accountable to do more action. So one of the key hypotheses the G20 Global Land Initiative has been working is to increase the number of countries where there is national legislation. And we have a separate track to work with the parliamentarians to achieve that. And that's also ongoing the side of this COP next week here in Mongolia. Thank you.
Morley, thank you very much indeed. So Stuart, coming to you, we've all heard the big promises. Organizations have made them. Countries certainly have also made these promises to restore land and nature. We know just how complicated and complex that process is. We also heard from Morley that we're not going to hit that 2030 target, which makes the target in 2040 all that much bigger. But as we approach those 2 days, or perhaps a middle ground, what needs to change? What needs to change in order to turn the promises into work? And also what happens on the ground? It's such a simple question, but everybody's trying to grasp a direction. It's like, what do I need to do?
Thanks. Thanks, Lucrezia. First of all, one of the advantages of like Murley and myself having lots of gray hair, I've been working on this for about 40 years. So I may look like a conservation suit, but I'm actually a restoration geek underneath it all. And I think actually, you know, I'd say we need to contextualize this of where we're actually at. 40 years ago, 20 years ago, this conversation would be 1,000,000 miles away. Restoration was only seen in terms of planted forests. It was about industrial plantations. The whole concept of ecosystem restoration it just wasn't there. It was, and I think one of the things that we should do is when we say, oh my goodness, only 12% implemented, I think actually we need to also look at this at the journey and understand the context of where we're going. So I see this actually not as a shortfall as such. I certainly see it as a challenge, but I also see it actually as building on foundations that have been laid. I think the narrative is out there. I think there is a recognition and a commitment, and that restoration and the sort of ecosystem restoration that GLI, IUCN and whatnot have been advocating is actually something that is now more and more mainstream. It's not just in the environment or conservation sector. It applies to mining. It's in fact, it's legal responsibilities now. It applies increasingly to agriculture. So part of the thing is, I would say first and foremost, we should be inspired of what we have achieved. But then to come back to answer your question, Lucrezia, I would say actually one of the things, I mean, I really agree with Murley. I think one of the things we do need to do is when we talk about synergies, it's very at the international level, synergies can be enabled, but synergies are realized the closer you get to the ground, that's where you see synergies really manifesting themselves. So subnational or national, and in some cases subnational legislation to be able to for that to be used. Also critically, as we start to see more consistency on both the methodologies and the reporting, that those need to be available and they need to be transparent, because monitoring is not just about ticking the box and reporting upwards. It's about getting it back down to the managers to give them more information so that they can adaptively manage and make decisions as they face changes and new challenges. I have a million other things to say, but there's probably a lot more interesting things coming, so I'll stop there. Thanks.
We can always come back, Stuart. Thank you very much. Just before we continue, for me to get a sense of how to time manage, is there anybody who is got an urgent question so I know to come to you in time? Anybody got any questions yet? We're good? We'll carry on. Wonderful. Thank you. Madhu, I'm going to come to you. So we've just heard there, what actually I took from Stuart was, do you know what? We've actually come very far. And one of the biggest challenges was perhaps in people understanding what restoration actually means, what it looks like. So I'm just wondering, for countries that are being asked two tasks, they're being asked to restore damaged nature, but also to conserve connected help to join those two goals, especially in those protected and conserved areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's a really important question. And I want to start with getting us all to look at Target 2 of the GBF in its entirety. And it doesn't stop at effective restoration. It actually goes on to say, in order to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services, ecological integrity and connectivity. So the reason I say this is Target 2 is only seen as restoration and 30%. This is for the GBF, the Global Biodiversity Framework. I think it's really important to look at the entire target. Restoration for what purpose? And that purpose of restoration is to bring back species and ecosystems. I think that's the key link with Target 3. And Target 3 within the Global Biodiversity Framework speaks to protecting and conserving 30% of the Earth's surface for biodiversity, for ecological integrity, for connectivity. I think what's been missing in the restoration dialogue is that focus on purpose. Restoration to what status? Not restoration for the sake of restoration, but restoration for biodiversity. So I think biodiversity has been completely missing in our dialogue. To the restoration dialogue, and that'll make the link to Target 3 very, very, very close. The second issue is we have limited resources. I think everybody agrees we don't have money flowing for restoration, nor do we have money flowing for protection. So what do we need to do? We need to prioritize. We need to have a triage. We need to acknowledge trade-offs. Where do we want to prioritize restoration? Is it in the lawn outside this space here, or is it in a protected area? And I think prioritizing restoration in areas that used to have high biodiversity, that have lost biodiversity, and this biodiversity loss is impacting not just nature, but also human communities. That's where we want to prioritize restoration. So prioritizing restoration within the context of protected areas is the second most important way of connection to Target 3.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thank you for that. So Chetan, I'm going to turn to you. Yeah, thank you. The same restoration project often appears in different national plans. We often see that. You've got international reports, you've got online platforms. What would a joined up evidence system actually look like? And it needs to be one that avoids double counting, and it gives decision makers information that they can trust. How do we go about that, Chetan?
Thank you. I'd like to build upon what was earlier said about the synergies and reframe it to say that landscapes do not change depending upon which convention or who is asking the question. Yeah. So we are talking about LDN here. We are talking about reversing, reducing, restoring. We are talking about the same landscape for biodiversity. And when we go to climate COP, we are talking about the same landscape for carbon. So this is the big challenge. Yeah, we are asking the same landscape to report to different conventions in different ways. So from my perspective, and I will take more grounded perspective, there are three elements of how we could bring coherence, if I understood your question. There are three things. First, really to recognize what is happening. And what is happening by that, I mean that we have really sophisticated ways of now measuring degradation, land cover change, etc. But one of the key reasons why we don't have success in restoration and progress is the fact that we still don't have ways of restoration planning in many countries. We have the numbers, but they don't necessarily mean, I mean, let's unpack this. When you have a number of 2.5 million hectare, you need to look at different land use type, biodiversity, people, etc. And that's where what Madhu was saying, prioritization comes in. Not many places this happens, and that's why we don't have progress there. So it's really important to have that context, because that is crucial for planning. So it starts with planning, having your correct baseline. Now the baseline is important as well, because both from a political perspective, but also from ecological perspective. It's really important to balance that. And I was in a session day before yesterday, and one of the things that caught my attention was the fact that in Mongolia, they're not using the baseline like last year's data or 5 years. They're using an average of 10 years as the baseline. This is really important because many countries kind of, don't use that. So I'm just giving the context of what needs to be done. But in terms of achieving coherence, as I said, 3 things: where the degradation is happening, a good understanding, and how we can bring all that information together, what interventions then taking place, and including those not just reporting on activities, but what outcomes we are making. Around interoperability of different systems. We will end up having different systems. It's not but we need to have interoperability where the systems or the different measurements and indicators need to speak to each other. That's the first step of solving this problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Devashri there is a colleague of mine in the G20 office. And when we were going through this report, I looked at her and I said, Devashri, you seem so excited about this. So I just need you to reduce this to something I can stop somebody on the street and say, this is really, really important. I asked her to cut through the scientific jargon. That is one of the hardest things to do. And I think that is one of the challenges that scientists and the convention has in telling the story of all this data that you're all collecting. So every time I speak to somebody, I see that enthusiasm. I say, okay, what does that mean? Why should it matter to me? And she had this big smile on her face. And she said, when I saw this data, and Devashri, just to remind you, is an information monitoring expert. She explained it to me. So before I come to the technical question, just put it into context for me. Why this matters away from the scientific world.
Right. I would first start with highlighting what our executive secretary quoted about this report. And then I would go to why I am excited about this report. Our executive secretary, Yasmin Fuad, says that this report shows both progress and the scale of challenges ahead. Restoration is happening, but we are still far from the level of implementation required to match country commitment. The priority now is to understand what is holding implementation back and to strengthen the capacity, monitoring, finance, and partnership needed to turn national targets into measurable results. The discussion here in Ulaanbaatar should reinforce clear message, the next phase. And the land agenda must be about implementation at scale. Ultimately, restoration will be judged not by hectares and pledges, but by hectares restored and by the difference that it makes on people, livelihood, and resilience. So basically, summing up what all of us have talked about today, but one of the things that I really find extremely interesting about this report, and why I like working with IUCN as well, is because we have put ourselves also in the spot. As you looked at the results, we saw that only 13% LDN has been reported, or according to LDN, the reported commitments, 13% comes from LDN and 7% from Bond Challenge. We don't shy away from showing some of these results. We are not sugarcoating our work at all. We are showing what is actually true, what is actually happening in the ground, but also this is one of the things that me as a young person can go to countries and talk to them about. It was the first report as well. Whenever I talk to any representative from a country, I ask them about their commitment. I ask them, This is what has been committed by your country. And now, from this report, I'm going to take that ahead and ask them, this is what has been reported. So how can we also fit in? I definitely feel that what Mr. Stewart has mentioned, which is this takes also nations to come together. This comes from both up and bottom up approach to come together and make restoration commitments.
Devashri, thank you very much. This is your last chance from the floor, please, to have a report like this laden with data, and this is your first sighting of it. Would you like to put a question to the panel before I ask for closing statements from Stuart, just to prepare you, and we close the panel. So could we just can we get them? Actually, could you come forward just so we don't pull the wire out? How many questions do I have? Well, now you're asking the questions. Okay. Short, succinct, 30-second question. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so I was looking at the report. I could see the numbers in terms of restoring this much amount of land. What I couldn't see is what was actually restored. What are the indicators? Okay, so I was looking at it was mentioned this soil restoration was done there. What has changed from the baseline? What was the baseline, which I couldn't see? I would like to. I'm curious to know about that.
Okay. What was missing? That's a very good question. Who'd like to take that, please?
Yes, thank you. As Muniz explained in his presentation, this report is primarily a compilation of the information provided by the parties to the conventions. And in each of the conventions, they define what is their commitment and what is their restoration as part of the convention definition. For example, in the UNCCD definition, land degradation is about land cover change, land productivity change, soil organic carbon change. So if these have gone down, that degradation, if they are moving up, that's restoration. So all the details are in the detailed report, which we'll be releasing the QR code shortly, and likewise for others. So it is varying for these different conventions exactly as to what is being measured. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question, succinct, and who you'd like to answer it, or why to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, panel, for a wonderful discussion. I come from India, and I have a very specific question. I have seen all the targets that have been achieved so far, very low indeed. However, the question is, if we are saying that the forest has been restored or trees have been planted.
Can I ask you just to raise your microphone a bit higher?
Okay.
Yes,
If the
thank you.
trees have been planted, have the right kind of trees been planted in the place? Has the habitat been restored to its original landscape? If that is something that has been monitored and observed, then it makes sense. So I would like to hear from the panel. Thank you.
Do we go into that scale of detail? Was that monitored? I wonder who'd like to answer that. Chetan, thank you. Or Devashri?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I could definitely answer that. That wasn't measured. To be very clear, that wasn't measured. And the reason why this wasn't measured, because this comes from country reporting. Now, this is what we are discussing here, which is number one, country reports challenge, and then we have what am I missing? The climate change one, which is NDC. No, NDCs, right? So the four ones. Within that, one of the challenges that we also have, that's why we always talk about Rio synergy, is because the reporting agencies within the countries are also different. And the precursors at which they measure or at which they, let's say, report is also different. The indicators are also different. That's why here we are discussing how to make sure that we have this synergy, how to make sure that there is not redundancy in terms of is exactly measuring with bird's eye perspective. We talked about remote sensing and GIS here, but exactly measuring with bird's eye perspective as to what is the what are the different indicators in terms of soil organic carbon? Has the productivity in the land changed? Has the biodiversity increased? So these are some of the elements that I definitely think in future we would have to include in the restoration commitments that countries have presented.
Could you pass, Chetan would just like to add? Yeah.
I would just compliment the fact that this is a really important question. I mean, what you have seen here is the aggregation of what indicators have been selected by these different conventions. So, I mean, to answer your question, we need to, and that's why when we talk about the restoration reporting, there is one, the aggregation, and there is the other aspect that we often don't discuss is what's happening at the local level. That's where this question is more relevant than this aggregation. So, yeah.
Chetan, thank you. Wonderful question. Thank you. Our final question.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if you could make it really short, our answers short. We've run over, but that's fine.
My name
Please.
is Paul, and I would like to first congratulate the panelists. This is a very good presentation. I would really wish if we had a very big audience. But anyway, my question and observation is, I don't think sometimes contribution of local grassroots efforts are being injected into these reports. And I think it is time that we consider the efforts of stewards of land and who are doing degradation efforts so that we can also showcase that they are also part and parcel of this. Thank you.
So your question is that something that could be put to, do I have a, yes, sure.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with you more, 110%. One of the problems we've got at the minute, and I say, let's celebrate the success, but also realize where we need to make progress, is that we're doing the same thing, the same general thing on the same landscape, but with different methodologies, with different ways of reporting. And I think this is one of the, and only selectively, we're not being able to build up a comprehensive picture. There is not, as Devashri was saying, we aren't even able to capture what progress is, because if for one convention, we'll focus on carbon, for another, we'll convention on biodiversity. And this is why we shaped and framed nature-based solutions, because ecosystems, natural ecosystems are wonderful things. They deliver multiple benefits. So we need to be able to a way of capturing that. So I would say there's two things. We need to capture the benefits, like the last question, but also we need to realize the importance of local and subnational agency in action. That is a big part of the story and a very interesting part of the story. And we're not being able to do that systematically. So that definitely should be a priority for how we move forward.
Stuart, thank you. You know, we're asking big questions when everybody in the audience is nodding their head. And before we come to our call of action to close the session from Madhu, our final question, please.
Thank you. So I'm Archana Chatterjee from the IUCN India Country Office. My question is that IUCN has a global restoration barometer. So how is this going to be aligned with the restoration barometer, or are we creating two systems?
Thank you.
I can take that question. If I could unpack, alignment means what you're referring to is how the data that we have gathered through the barometer has been used in this reporting. So yes, that has formed the basis of some of this kind of methodological, how aggregation can take place.
Carry on, Chetan.
Yeah. You want to compliment?
No, the floor's yours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just to, just the restoration barometer has been the basis or has informed this work significantly. That's the first part that I would highlight. The second part is the fact that it goes back to the question about the indicators. When we developed the barometer, we looked at all these different reporting, and we decided one of the things that we focused was to how can we make reporting relevant without overwhelming the countries, as well as practical. So we don't kind of impose a set of new indicators. And that again is kind of, the diagram that Muniz had all the three. We have drawn a lot from that. So that would be my response to how the alignment is with this report.
Okay. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, to have everybody here in one, yeah.
So fully agree with Chetan, and obviously Chetan's driving this here. One other thing I really want to, we've talked about in getting this alignment, in getting this coherence, building synergies, what we need governments to do, others to do. I also want to have a bit of self-reflection. As Devashri said, we do self-reflect. And I think one of our responsibilities as well is, as we build up these systems, I speak for IUCN with the Navigator, we have got to start to cooperate and engage more. We can't say we need to see synergies and then invent things that are different. We have a responsibility to actually come together. And actually, one of the things, if there's any donors in the room, I would appeal to you, stop fragmenting the international community and bring us to, tell us to get together so that we're working to work collaboratively and cooperatively, as we've done with IUCN and GLI have done, to help this process move forward. Thanks.
So that was our first call to action. Our second and our closing comes from Madhu. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think it's been an excellent session, and I'm not going to talk about the report itself, but I think it brought to surface some of the gaps and some of the challenges of reporting, the multiplicity of systems out there. But I do want to make 4 closing points. The first one is the emphasis on the quantitative element. Everybody is looking at quantitative percentages, 30%, 20%, billions of hectares. And I think what we're losing in the quantitative focus is the focus on quality. Again, bringing it back to focus on biodiversity, back to native biodiversity. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is we really need to look at underlying causes. We haven't had a chance to really look. I mean, this was about the report, but what are the causes of degradation? Agriculture, infrastructure, energy, etc. And I think we've got to start looking more carefully at underlying causes if we want to fill the implementation gap. I think we talked a little bit about spatial planning and the importance of national laws. And I think our dear colleague here talked about the importance of national regulation, which is hugely, hugely important. But I think I want to say a little bit about the synergies. I think synergies very relevant. I think we've got to think about those people who are on the ground having to report against all these 3 conventions for the same landscape. Against carbon, against biodiversity. But we've got to think about synergies, not just across the conventions, but within countries. We need the Ministry of Agriculture talking to the Ministry of Mining and Energy, and talking to the Ministry of Transport. Measurement should not be an obstacle. And I want us to think about the opportunity that advanced AI and advanced technologies is going to bring to measurement. And finally, my final point is protection is relatively less expensive than restoration. Since you have me as chair of the World Commission on Protected Areas, I am going to say protect well and conserve well, and we'd have to restore less. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thank you. And thank you to our panel. My very quick closing points to the gentleman who said we need a bigger room next year. 100%. So there's our target. We'll get a bigger room or for the next report and we'll fill it, but it's up to you to get the word round. The QR code will be put, we're just having a little glitch. If you can come by the pavilion at some point later today, the QR code will be there for you. You can download that report, but I am quite willing to sell mine for a price. It'll only cost you a cup of coffee. So if you would like a copy of my report, it's all yours. I will leave it here for you. Thank you to my audience. Thank you to my panel. Enjoy the rest of your COP. Thank you. I grew up, I spent some time in Triangle, near my You want me to come to Zimbabwe? I want to come to Zimbabwe. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So what are you, what's your?
Yeah, true capacity. Yeah, then IUCN and of government delegations. Yes, government delegations.
No problem, but we can have a picture with you there. Yes.
For those of you who are still here, we have a QR code. Get your digital copy of the reports. Over and out. Goodbye.
Since 2020, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Voilà, c'est à la bonne hauteur.
Vraiment, c'est la bonne hauteur.
Ouais, bah, on est là, on a le même, on est le même taille. Ici. Voilà. Ça devrait être. Si tu veux le pousser, tu peux, hein, comme ça. Voilà. Attends, je peux juste mettre des mics.
We are going to start. C'est pas ça fait. La réunion, finalement, c'est à midi. Oui, c'est midi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to take your seats, we'll be starting the session in just one moment. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Nous allons donc commencer le side event sur la restauration des paysages, mais pas la restauration pour la restauration pour avoir des opportunités. Et nous allons donc, pour ce side event, we are going to, don't worry, Thomas, we are going to have two languages because you know in the style, the more language is French. And I know you know it's okay. So for this side event, we will do it in several times. We will start with an opening remark with which will be done by Roberto Ameriz. I hope I put. And he's the director of international cooperation of the ministry in charge of environment in Italy. And after that, we have an opening remark from Global Mechanism of UNCCD by Gilles Ouedraogo Amadou. And myself, I will give you quickly something about the approach, the model of the thing I call Log Me project. And we will have a small video in 8 minutes before the partner at global level will come back to the model of Log Me. And we will end the session by a closing remark from UNCCD. So I will give the floor to Roberto Ameriz.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, colleagues and partners, good morning, and thank you for inviting us to contribute to this important discussion. It is a real pleasure to open this exchange on behalf of the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. And in our perspective, the collaboration with the UNCCD and IUCN is highly valuable. This is because it shows how land restoration can move from individual intervention to a broader and structured partnership based on implementation, learning, and scaling. The first phase of our program, implemented in Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Niger between 2020 and 2024, showed that investment in the degraded lands can generate tangible and concrete results for people and communities. Nearly 35,000 hectares of land were restored, and more than 464,000 people benefited, including over 267,000 women. What made these results possible? These results were possible because the intervention was not limited to direct soil restoration, but it took an ecosystem-based approach, combining the restoration work with sustainable agriculture, with income-generating activities, with access to renewable energy, access to water, and different action with the aim to strengthen the resilience of fragile contexts. Building on these results, the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security and UNCCD launched the second phase of the project in 2025. So the second phase aims to consolidate the results achieved in the first 3 countries and to extend the operation to Benin
and Senegal. This transition is significant because to scaling up doesn't mean to replicate the same action in other places, but calls us to identify how it's working, what we can adapt to different contexts, and under which conditions our work function and produce a useful result for communities. In the Sahel, land degradation, water scarcity, decline in agricultural productivity, and socioeconomic pressures are deeply connected. Investing in land restoration, therefore, means addressing vulnerability while also creating practical opportunities for communities. From this perspective, our collaboration with UNCCD and IUCN is not only an environmental action, it also connects land degradation neutrality with climate resilient, sustainable livelihoods and decent work. As we look to a new phase, I would like to highlight two different aspects that are particularly important to us. The first in monitoring and evidence. As donors and development partners, we need to demonstrate the results of our investments, but monitoring should go beyond reporting numbers. It should help us understand whether interventions are effective, why they work, and how they can be improved. This requires robust methodologies, the involvement of research institutions, and the participation of local communities who can provide direct knowledge of what is changing on the ground. The second aspect is the creation of real opportunities for better lives. Land restoration will only be sustainable if people living on that land see tangible benefits from protecting and restoring it. This is why sustainable value chains are so important. Restored land should be reflected not only in hectares, but also in livelihoods, local enterprises, and economic opportunities for women and young people particularly. The discussion is also timely in the context of UNCCD COP17. As parties discuss the implementation of the convention and the future monitoring framework, this experience can help connect policy discussion on targets, objectives, and indicators with what happens on the ground. Field-based interventions are where political commitments are tested and translated into concrete results for people, communities, and ecosystems. Today's discussion gives us the opportunity to share lessons, listen to partners, and consider how proven approaches can become more effective at regional scale. Our ambition for this next phase is not only to do more, but to do better. Strengthening evidence, deepening the participation of local communities, and connecting land restoration with sustainable economic opportunities. We look forward to today's discussion and to continuing our work together to make collective action more effective, more locally owned, and more lasting. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Director Amerisi, for those remarks and for very rightly indicating the importance of this project and what it represents not only for the LDN vision, but for UNCCD as a whole. I won't be long. I just really want to take the opportunity to welcome you all to Alambatar in COP17 in Mongolia. And even though this is not a pavilion that I'm involved with, welcome to the IUCN Pavilion. I think IUCN did a very good job. So a round of applause for them as well. I particularly also want to take this opportunity to thank the government of Italy and MASE in particular for the opportunity for renewing this project after its first phase and after the results that it gained. Because not only, as it was indicated in the first allocution, was this project expanded into scale, but we really wanted the communities to be able to be self-sustainable or self-sustained after this project. And I also want to announce that, as it was indicated, methodologies and monitoring is extremely important for this project. We will have another side event on the 27th that will go over that. And on the Monday, the 24th, we will also have another side event by the government of Italy, going over the investments and the support that Italy is currently giving in Africa. So thank you very much again to all partners involved. And I'd like to leave the floor to Félicité Chabigoni so she can give us a more in-depth overview of what was done for this project so far and what is ahead, what lies ahead and the challenges that we're facing. Thank you so much. And let's give it up for Félicité.
Ok, rebonjour à tous. Peut-être avant de continuer, je voudrais demander ceux qui sont à 100% francophones. 100%, ok. J'ai fait ma présentation en anglais pour être un peu équitable et je vais présenter doucement en français. Et ma collègue Sarah, à qui je demande qu'on fasse les bancs, elle est à la technique. Elle va résumer ce que j'ai écrit et que je n'ai pas dit en anglais. Ça peut aller? Ça change un peu au niveau du pavillon. On tourne un peu vers le français. Donc, LOGMI, c'est le projet Terre d'opportunité au Sahel, et comme l'a dit les prédécesseurs, qui est financé par le ministère italien en charge de l'environnement et à travers l'UNCCD et l'UICN. Quand on dit l'UICN, je tiens à dire que c'est l'UICN et ses partenaires ici présents. Parce que là, je vois dans la salle des partenaires du Ghana, du Bénin, du Sénégal, je vois le Burkina, je ne vois pas le Niger, mais quand on dit l'UICN, la structure, le Niger là, donc les 5 pays sont bien représentés, ok? Quand on dit l'UICN met en œuvre, c'est y compris les 5 pays. Parce que l'UICN n'a pas la capacité d'aller dans toutes les zones d'intervention du projet LOGMI. Donc, chaque fois, je tiens à revenir sur cet aspect. Et là, aujourd'hui, nous allons beaucoup insister sur le modèle LOGMI, pas sur la présentation du projet. Souvent, quand nous attendons Sahel, on se dit que le Sahel, c'est dégradé, c'est les terres dégradées. Mais le point de vue du projet LOGMI, pour nous, les terres dégradées, c'est une opportunité. Ce n'est pas un problème. Au contraire, nous prenons dans ce projet la dégradation des terres comme une opportunité parce que le Sahel a un potentiel, que ce soit les terres, le soleil, les jeunes, les femmes et tout ce qui est produit, les chaînes de valeur des zones arides. Donc, dans ce projet, l'approche, c'est de ne pas restaurer pour restaurer, mais faire la restauration pour faire dégager des opportunités. Et donc, nous avons une manière différente de voir la restauration des terres. À travers cette chaîne, c'est vrai, nous avons des terres dégradées, nous restaurons des écosystèmes, nous améliorons les productions, nous avons des chaînes de valeur à travers les marchés qui sont disponibles dans les différentes zones d'intervention et nous renforçons les moyens de subsistance. Ce qui fait que vraiment, du paysage jusqu'à la production, nous avons la capacité de renforcer les économies des bénéficiaires. Donc, ici, c'est ce que nous appelons le modèle du projet LOGME. LOGME, ici, c'est Land of Opportunity Global Mechanism. Et pour nous, un paysage, ça a plusieurs retours d'investissement. Et nous restaurons, nous produisions, nous ajoutons de la valeur, nous créons des jobs green, des green jobs, et nous renforçons la résilience. Et bien sûr, à travers un certain nombre de paramètres, notamment l'énergie renouvelable, la gouvernance locale, les femmes et les jeunes, les marchés, que ce soit les marchés locaux ou internationaux. Cette fois-ci, je n'ai pas pu amener le beurre de karité et le miel, mais nous en avons beaucoup dans les zones d'intervention. Et bien sûr, je pense que les officiels ont insisté sur ces points. Le suivi et évaluation. Et comme l'a dit le directeur Roberto, ce n'est pas restaurer beaucoup, mais restaurer de façon plus efficace pour cette phase. Et voilà, la phase 1 qui s'est déroulée de 2020 à 2024 a permis vraiment de tester ce modèle dans 3 pays, notamment le Ghana, le Bénin et le Niger. Le Burkina et le Niger. Et là, après cette phase 1, on s'est rendu compte vraiment qu'il était nécessaire, et là, je m'arrête encore pour remercier les partenaires globaux, qu'il était nécessaire d'aller à l'échelle, vu que le modèle a marché dans les zones, dans ces 3 pays, nous sommes allés à l'échelle et on a étendu ce modèle dans deux nouveaux pays pour cette phase. Et bien sûr, étant pourquoi, dans la phase 1, il y avait des évidences. Et là, je fais sortir ici quelques chiffres qui montrent que les évidences ont permis de démontrer que le modèle LOGME marche. Ça a marché de 2020 à 2024. Maintenant, on a vu que ça a mis également ça a permis d'avoir des changements vraiment mesurables. Je ne vais pas rentrer dans les détails ici, mais nous avons la documentation par rapport à ça. Et pour continuer, on s'est rendu compte que derrière ces 36 000 hectares qui ont été restaurés, nous avons constaté que la restauration a permis de changer des vies. Il y a eu plus de production, plus d'eau potable. On sait que le Sahel, c'est le problème d'eau. Et il y a eu des entreprises de jeunes, ici j'ai oublié les jeunes, de femmes et de jeunes qui ont été mises en place. Et aussi, nous avons pu connecter les marchés de ces populations, de ces jeunes, de ces bénéficiaires au marché local, au marché international. Pour une anecdote, lors d'un comité consultatif, un des participants a vidé, j'allais dire, la boutique d'une zone d'intervention au Burkina et nous disait que le beurre de qualité était déjà acheté. Il a mis sur sa page Facebook, il dit que aucun participant n'a pu faire les achats le jour-là. Il a vidé carrément la boutique. Donc, c'est une manière, on a eu à faire des fois également pour collecter, parce que le constat est que, c'est vrai, nous restaurons, mais souvent, les produits des zones arides, les populations n'ont pas la connexion vers les marchés internationaux et même nationaux. Donc, je peux dire que c'est vraiment le modèle permet de mettre en place un nexus à travers la restauration, à travers un nexus eau, énergie, production, processing, comment on dit en français, en tout cas, processing et marché. Et les conditions font que les communautés se sentent vraiment ownership, responsables de ce qui est en train d'être fait. Et comment LOGME marche, comment le modèle LOGME marche? Nous commençons bien sûr par la restauration des opportunités. À travers, l'UCN a développé plein d'outils qui sont utilisés, mais là, c'est à travers l'outil MEO qui permet d'identifier les différentes opportunités de restauration sur le paysage. Ensuite, bien sûr, nous mettons les communautés qui sont directement concernées au centre et nous lions ces restaurations aux moyens de subsistance et au marché et nous combinons l'action locale à l'appui institutionnel. Et enfin, nous apprenons, nous adaptons et nous construisons des partenariats. La leçon à tirer est que la restauration peut être vraiment durable lorsque la restauration est vraiment durable, à mon avis, lorsque nous sommes sûrs de faire ressortir des opportunités économiques. Ce n'est pas restaurer pour restaurer, mais sûr qu'il y a une appropriation une appropriation et vraiment les bénéficiaires sentent, j'allais dire, de l'économie derrière. Même si c'était juste restaurer pour restaurer, ce n'est pas sûr que nous aurons plutôt quelque chose de durable. Et voilà, quand nous passons à la deuxième phase, nous sommes maintenant à à 5 pays. Je sais qu'à la COP passée, la directrice générale de l'UICN disait quand on l'informait sur les 7 événements, elle n'a pas pu participer. Elle dit, tiens, que s'il y a la phase 2, c'est parce que l'Italie est satisfaite. S'il n'y avait pas la phase 2, si l'Italie n'était pas satisfaite, il n'y aurait pas de phase 2. Donc, nous espérons que l'Italie continuera à être satisfaite. Et donc, nous avons consolidé cette phase et là, nous sommes en train de répliquer dans 2 nouveaux pays, à savoir le Bénin et le Sénégal. Mais les 3 précédents pays demeurent. Ici, juste, je prends une pause pour rappeler, je ne sais pas, sûrement tout le monde, c'est vrai, nous avons des partenaires dans la salle, mais tout le monde n'est pas, j'allais dire, ancien. C'est juste pour rappeler le cadre institutionnel du projet qui nous amène à mettre en place ce modèle LogMe. Nous avons j'ai bougé, mais je suis passé par le micro. Nous avons le ministère italien en charge de l'environnement et de la sécurité énergétique, qui est le donneur. J'aime dire, c'est lui qui donne l'argent. Et nous avons l'UNCCD, et à travers sa collaboration avec le Global Mécanisme, avec l'Italie qui fait la supervision stratégique. Et nous avons un comité de pilotage, le comité consultatif également, et l'UICN et ses partenaires sont en charge de la mise en œuvre, avec l'appui bien sûr des partenaires. Et dans chacun des 5 pays cités ici, nous avons la même structure organisationnelle, c'est-à-dire les structures focales de l'UNCCD, parce que l'UNCCD n'a pas de bureau dans tous les pays. Nous avons un membre de l'UICN ou une ONG et une structure de recherche. Parce que dans l'OGMI, nous faisons beaucoup la recherche et l'UICN n'a pas la prétention d'avoir toutes les capacités. Donc, l'UICN est un réseau. Nous travaillons avec tous ces partenaires dans chacun des 5 pays. Et bien sûr, souvent, je n'aime pas trop mettre les bénéficiaires en bas. Moi, je les mettrais en haut. Mais bon, bien sûr, il y a les communautés, les jeunes, les femmes qui sont principalement ciblées dans le projet. Et voilà, toujours, si je reste maintenant à la phase 2, qui a commencé, le lancement a eu lieu, je pense, l'année passée, en septembre à Dakar, le lancement régional. Parce qu'il y a eu le lancement global, si Gilles confirme, non. Mais régional, c'était à Dakar. Et pour le moment, après une année et demie, je dirais, nous avons vraiment placé les bases. Les nouveaux paysages ont été identifiés dans les nouveaux pays et d'autres anciens ont été confirmés. Donc, c'est vraiment les bases institutionnelles pour cette phase qui ont été posées. Et l'ambition, c'est vraiment voir comment étendre cette approche parce que nous constatons que cette approche marche. L'approche marche, c'est comment l'étendre à d'autres zones du Sahel. Je sais que le partenaire s'intéresse beaucoup au Sahel depuis plusieurs décennies. Et donc, si ça marche bien, on pourra répliquer, pas pour faire beaucoup, mais pour faire mieux. Voilà, je vais m'arrêter ici pour dire vraiment que lorsque nous restaurons les terres, nous créons des green jobs, nous renforçons les communautés, nous renforçons la résilience, nous permettons de contribuer aux cibles NDT. J'avais oublié de signaler, et je vais le signaler ici, et les zones d'intervention du projet sont des zones définies dans le rapport de définition des cibles NDT de chaque pays. Donc, en réalité, c'est un des critères. C'est les zones chaudes, dites chaudes, c'est ça, non, hotspot, dans les 5 pays. Bien sûr, il y a d'autres critères, notamment les zones d'intervention de l'UICN et de ses partenaires. Voilà, je m'arrête ici. Je pense que ça, c'était une visite de terrain au Sénégal. Voilà, merci. Et j'ai beaucoup parlé. On va regarder un peu, on va faire une petite séance vidéo. Là, nous allons partager une vidéo du Ghana, le Ghana étant une des zones d'intervention du projet, une vidéo de 8 minutes où vous allez voir les interventions de certains bénéficiaires et partenaires. Merci, Sarah.
Conservation of Nature, IUCN, and its partners have implemented a project titled Creating Lands of Opportunity, Transforming Livelihoods Through Landscape Restoration in the Sahel, briefly termed LOGME. It is funded by the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security through the Global Mechanism of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD.
Le projet doit contribuer aux indicateurs définis par les points focaux de l'UNCCD, c'est-à-dire contribuer aux cibles MDT.
The project is implemented in 8 communities within 4 districts in the Upper East and Upper West regions of Ghana. This is done in strategic collaboration with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture through the respective district agric offices, the Water Resources Commission, and community members to help achieve the objective of land restoration as well as improve livelihoods within the communities the project operates.
Through the intervention of this project, community members have been trained how to produce certified seed, and that is one area by which their crop productivity has been enhanced.
When you are farming, you plant an acre, you get 2 bags. Now you've got to know that an acre is getting 8 to 9 bags. That's a change totally. You are gaining, but first you were losing.
The introduction of organic manure has been one of the key components of it. Initially, women were just limited to the kitchen because they were not even allowed to use the land. But because of this intervention, the males have understand that yes, females are also better off if they get a support.
They plant for them 1 acre, they'll give you the seed, and then they will give you the inputs. After harvesting, all that you've gotten is yours. Improve upon your life.
Equipment distributed include roller planters, weighing scales, tarpaulins, PICs, sacks, a multi-purpose thresher, deep freezers, ice chests, soya beans, sugar, packaging bottles, among others.
This is a positive impact that the project has brought to us.
The Lands of Opportunity project has supported beneficiaries with 68,974 seedlings to help farmers plant to improve upon the natural resource, forest reserves, as well as to be able to mitigate the effects of climate change. About 1,780.9 hectares of land in the 8 communities has been put under restoration in response to the challenges posed by climate change, such as drought, receding vegetation, and declining water availability.
See that all our valleys have been dry away, so we don't have water again. That is why we are planting this tree to recover our rivers.
LOGME has helped establish 4 community tree nurseries with capacity of 40,000 seedlings to restore 150 hectares of degraded buffer zones in Nadima, Dalasa, Sakalu, and Nanchala.
These are areas that we have a lot of vegetation, and most of it is found along the rivers, the water course. Unfortunately, because of activities of exploiting these resources, we have reduced that number. But with the advent of this particular project, this activity, the lesson we picked is that now they know the value of planting, what will contribute to making sure that the water is protected.
We also looked at expanding access to water, which is a great resource that the communities rely on.
LOGME provided 8 solar-powered mechanized boreholes developed to provide clean drinking water in all the 8 project communities.
Our animals were finally difficult, but now they have made the gutter to be wide, such a way that anytime you go there, there is water in the gutter, and then our animals get water there to drink.
In fact, this project has been a game changer in the Talensi district, in these 2 communities that we are operating in. Women were interested in dry season gardening, but do not have the capacity to do that. So the project saw that there was a need for them to support the women to be able to engage in dry season vegetable production.
You want to that cockala? I yell 6 million. Somebody 6 million color. That I am not fine. Para em fami mara ke de ke be hendia school.
Ge wa nana. Di sabat maranya yoni tuli maranya 10 million. Dona yoni mayala 6 million. Garo ko. So la ta songra te nenti nenye behra to komala. Ge dara zen. Ge vora za ma hala. Dogra dinu ma. Te dita. Te pangabona te zanwa.
Being off the national grid is a major development deficit for any community.
So Arusha Ghana focused mainly on the renewable energy component with the main objective of making the communities energy smart.
Lock me project only jala. Pijamati kuna vitima ye. Ate tu container charge phones man. Down to that na chenka bisi ga charge phones man. Mayore maya tetika solar charge phones man.
It's simple, but it's so important to the economic and the social support, for these communities.
Bahawa ko gunra hono ma ana. Baka hono ma ana ko ra ko gunra. Ba ngana ba gwen. Ana ba madabana. Ba be ha mo yo na kia yo wama. Baka ndifrana. Bakia irgo ko hono mo tudinje. Ya wo chokiara ba be.
The project provided 2,500 cooking stoves to all the households in all the communities.
The project assisted over 120 women groups in Dalasa, Bango, Yameriga, and Nanchala communities with capacities on beekeeping and provided 120 beehives and protective equipment.
Ya tarfida. Tono kwa yiri. No go to bisukuru. Emeto onke no swang to me. Tetap na wata. Ya tap to galam bam ted. And I see
in Awara Dome, the spirit of entrepreneurship of over 60 women has been awakened as they received capacity building training to produce soap and moisturizers as an additional livelihood and contributing significantly to the local economy.
We have baking soap. We have bath soap. We sell at 16 cities. So that the person can go and sell at 20 cities. But with the medicated soap, we sell at 5 cities. Some buy to go and sell at 6 cities. With the liquid soap, we sell at 15. Some of them buy to go and sell at 20. But with the gallons, we sell at 35, and they also buy to go and sell at 40. We will keep this on, and poverty will move out of our community.
Après les 3 ans, bientôt 4 ans, les partenaires de l'Italie ne sont jamais venus sur le terrain. Mais il faut confiance à l'UCN que nous les envoyons, qu'ils sont contents de la mise en œuvre du projet.
Lands that stood devastated by the effects of climate change are now lands of opportunity, and the people of Awara Dome, Dalasa, Bango, Yameriga, Nanchala, Tarikum, and Sakelu contribute to the 82,876 beneficiaries, including 50% women, 30% youth, and 20% men whose livelihoods transformed through landscape restoration in the Sahel.
Ok, ça c'était la vidéo du Ghana. On allait ajouter celle du Burkina et du Niger, mais bon, nous allons transformer le CDVN en séance ciné. Donc, je pense qu'on va s'arrêter pour ce qui est des vidéos. Nous n'avons pas assez de temps, mais il est quand même important que Tommaso et Cecilia et Gilles, je voudrais qu'ils reviennent sur certains aspects. Parce que l'OGMI a la particularité où les partenaires, c'est vrai, l'UCN et ses partenaires sont ceux qui mettent en œuvre le projet, mais l'OGMI a la particularité où, pas à pas, j'allais dire day to day, les partenaires au niveau global sont avec nous. Donc, je vais commencer par Cecilia et lui poser juste une toute petite question. Tu vas la répondre en anglais. Et cette fois-ci, je vais faire travailler un peu Sarah, à savoir quel est l'intérêt. J'ai dit tantôt que vers la fin de la vidéo, l'Italie n'est jamais venue sur le terrain. Mais malgré ça, l'Italie ne vient pas sur le terrain, mais l'argent de l'Italie arrive au Sahel. Donc, je voudrais juste que Cécilia revienne sur les relations entre le Sahel et le ministère de l'Italie. Je sais que tu vas parler sous le contrôle du directeur de la coopération internationale, mais je me permets de te poser cette question. Mais tu peux la répondre en anglais.
Okay, it works. Okay, so yeah, I will reply in English, sorry. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you IUCN for organizing this first side event. It is a very interesting question. I would like first to say why we didn't come to the ground. We actually really intended to come to the ground, but yes, during the first period, the first phase of the project, there was several issues related to first to the pandemic, then to the security conditions, and so it was impossible for us to come to the ground. And I'd like to say on that it is actually amazing to us how IUCN, UNCCD managed to deliver all these results. So as we have seen, it is well above the intended target regarding the restoring land. It is well above the intended target of beneficiaries. And even if there was so many challenges related to the overall context, IUCN managed to deliver all that, and UNCCD, of course. So that was really why we were very impressed, and why we decided also, our ministry decided also to go beyond that. And well, and we very much intend to come to the ground for the second phase. We came last year in Senegal for the launch, and we are looking forward to come again and see what the second phase is delivering on the ground. And I wanted to just to answer to your question, to say something about the name of the second phase, because yes, LOGME is the acronym, but the second phase is called Widen, Proven, for Us. So widen, proven for us because we have seen that this model that Felicite was showing us is actually working. And it's working not only in terms of how many hectares is restored, how many people are reached by the project, but it works because it connects. It has a landscape approach, as our director Amerise was saying before. It connects access to energy, water. It connects importance of having better livelihoods on the ground. And this is why it is actually working. It gets from the communities to ask, to listen to their needs and to understand what is better, what is the better action in each site. And for us, this is the relationship that we would like to have with Sahel. As you maybe know, Africa is a priority for Italy. The Mattei Plan for Africa highlights, which is promoted by the government of Italy, highlights a different connection. So peer-to-peer connection between Italy and the cooperation countries. And this is what Sahel is really demonstrating. So how to have this kind of cooperation, which is not coming with our actions we already decided, but it's actually to listen to the needs that the communities have and to listen to what is actually the traditions, the local knowledge, and to all of that, build that into the project. So this is our the message of LOGME, I think. Thank you.
Ok, merci Cécilia. Sarah va nous faire un résumé rapide.
Je vais juste résumer. J'ai écrit comme à une vitesse, donc j'espère que je vais pouvoir lire. Cécile a commencé pour expliquer la raison qu'ils ne sont pas venus visiter sur le site. C'était, bon, il y avait le Covid, la pandémie, puis plusieurs situations de sécurité. Donc, mais ils étaient là pour le départ de la deuxième phase à Sénégal et ils ont toute intention de venir visiter dans cette phase. Alors, ce qu'elle a dit, désolée, je vais juste dire. Alors, pour eux, c'est important le projet est très important. Ils sont aussi fiers du fait qu'ils sont venus et ils écoutent les communautés. C'est pas qu'ils sont venus avec des idées préconçues. Ils écoutent les besoins des communautés et puis ils impliquent tous ces besoins dans l'implémentation du projet. Je pense que tu comprends pas, tu me corriges si jamais. Et le fait que ils ont été très contents aussi que la première phase, elle a donné plus qu'on pensait. Et donc, c'est pour ça que le gouvernement d'Italie, qui pour eux, l'Afrique est très importante, mais ils étaient très contents avec les résultats. Et donc, juste un petit mot sur le nom de la deuxième phase, c'était, c'était quoi? C'était...
Widen proven furrows.
That's right, voilà. Donc, c'est pour vraiment pour donner plus d'accès à tout le monde et à la terre. Je pense que c'est bon, non?
Les sillons éprouvés élargis.
Les sillons éprouvés.
Élargir les sillons éprouvés.
Merci beaucoup, Sarah. Les sillons étaient éprouvés à la phase 1, donc on les élargit à la phase 2. Et du ministère italien, je pense que nous allons descendre au Global Mechanism de l'UNCCD avant de revenir au ministère italien. Nous savons que le Global Mechanism, j'allais dire, c'est sa raison de vivre, restaurer les terres. Et le Sahel, bien sûr, a un intérêt pour le Global Mechanism. Maintenant, je voudrais que, Gilles, tu reviennes un peu sur le modèle LogMe. Au niveau du Global Mechanism, il y a beaucoup de projets qui sont suivis, notamment celui en lien avec la Grande Muraille Verte. Mais LogMe, j'allais dire, c'est particulier. Depuis le début du CRD20, nous disons que nous ne resterons pas pour restaurer. Même s'il y a un besoin de restauration, tant que derrière, il n'y a pas une opportunité qui se dégage, LogMe ne s'engage pas. Donc, je voudrais que tu reviennes et compares avec les autres modèles éventuels qui sont mis en œuvre au niveau du Global Mechanism.
Merci beaucoup, Félicité. En réalité, je pense que déjà le mécanisme mondial est spécial parce que sa vraie vocation est de faire la mobilisation des financements pour les pays pour qu'ils puissent procéder à la restauration de leur sol et de leur patrimoine territorial. Et en réalité, il n'est pas du mandat du mécanisme mondial ou de UNCCD de mettre en œuvre des projets. On nous l'a souvent rappelé. Donc, déjà, pour l'accélérateur de la Grande Muraille Verte, nous faisons exception parce que non seulement nous avons ce mandat d'appuyer la mobilisation de ressources, mais en plus de ça, nous avons des projets pilotes que nous mettons en œuvre à travers ces partenariats-là. Donc, il y a un partenariat existant avec le gouvernement de l'Autriche, mais je dirais que LogMe est encore plus spécial parce que nous avons cette convention avec UICN qui a une expertise avérée dans la région du Sahel et qui est le partenaire parfait pour mettre en œuvre un projet de l'envergure de LogMe et de LogMe 2. Et c'est pour ça que, après la première phase, qui a, comme Cécilia l'a dit tout à l'heure, dépassé les attentes, nous n'avons pas hésité à re-signer une convention avec UICN parce que les résultats étaient déjà là et il n'y avait pas lieu de chercher un autre partenaire de mise en œuvre. Parce que la vision est la même. Nous cherchons à servir les populations pour qu'elles puissent devenir autonomes et pour qu'à la fin du projet LogMe, qu'il y ait cette dynamique de croissance au niveau de la restauration des sols, la production de crops qui leur amènent des bénéfices, comme le miel. J'ai beaucoup aimé cette vidéo parce que nous voyons vraiment comment cette initiative-là transforme les vies de ces populations en temps réel, mais non seulement pour ces femmes et ces hommes-là, mais pour leurs enfants et pour les générations futures. Et ces enfants-là aussi voient comment les choses se passent. Et à l'avenir, c'est probablement quelque chose qu'ils vont espérer à faire eux aussi, peut-être même de manière améliorée. Et une autre raison pour laquelle ce projet est vraiment spécial, c'est parce que c'est une mise en œuvre pratique de l'approche LDN qui est, si on veut, promue par le département de la science de UNCCD également. Et donc, ce projet est vraiment, vraiment spécial pour UNCCD, pour le mécanisme mondial, pour l'Italie et je l'espère aussi pour les populations du Sahel que nous servons, y compris le Sénégal, le Burkina, le Ghana, le Niger et maintenant le Bénin. Merci.
Je pense que Gilles va continuer en anglais. Je vais faire économiser la...
Oh,
On a l'avantage de facilité, donc je peux...
I was trapped. I will just summarize what I said. I was talking about the particularity of this project specifically and of the Great Green Wall Accelerator. The global mechanism of UNCCD is not designed to implement projects. It's really designed to mobilize funding for the parties so they can go on their land restoration missions and reach their LDN targets. Now, that being said, with the Great Green Wall Accelerator, we have this exception where we also implement pilot projects. And we know how much this means to the populations in the Sahel, to IUCN, to Italy, and to UNCCD itself. That being said, this project represents so much for UNCCD, and all in all, that's what it came to.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now I will move to Tommaso. Tommaso, he's from the Ministry of in charge of Environment as well. And you know, a project has a beginning and the end. Tommaso, I will say he's not the policeman, but the one who he has to make sure that when we finish, when the project is closed, he can steal from his office in Italy following the impact of the project, right? So I would like you to come back and to explain a little bit how you are supporting us for monitor this project.
Okay, I will try to make the story short because the work that we are doing together, I think it's relevant in demonstrating how the relationships between our ministry, UNCCD, and IUCN are working. That is not exactly what you were showing in the slides where there was a hierarchy. If you follow the presentation of Félicité, there was the ministry at the top and then a cascade of institutions. And indeed, we are trying to work in a different way, trying to be interacting with the local level and the other levels of the project more directly. Why? Because we want really to demonstrate if and how this project is proceeding well and how we are achieving the results that, as Félicité was showing, are challenging and difficult, because indeed now we want to focus on the positive side of the story, but there's also some more hidden aspects, let's say, that need to be clarified in terms of monitoring, because how we define a land as restored. We can spend hours, days discussing this. And that is why we are posing a lot of attention in implementing monitoring mechanism and monitoring frameworks that can help us identifying which are the actions that really works well, both in terms of the effects on the ecosystems, but also on the effects on society, and all the links that you were showing in your presentation. Indeed, you talk about water, energy, land nexus. The nexus is broader because it's involving the ecosystem, and in the ecosystem, society is involved as well, because we are an entity that are part of the ecosystem as well. So the complexity of this project is reflected into the complexity of the monitoring and evaluation framework that we are building together. Again, it's a matter of relationships, and I think one of the core value of this project is that we are doing our best as donors to be not only donors, to be really involved in the activities and to be really part of the discussion. A discussion that is not always plain, but it has to be like this, because we cannot avoid to say that we are facing also difficulties in defining the effectiveness of our actions. And that is why we are working hard to solve these kind of issues. Coming to the positive side of the story, but it was clear from the presentation, I think that the results of the first phase are demonstrating why the Italian ministry wanted to proceed and wanted to invest more money in the project. And one thing came to my mind when we were in Senegal, and again, I connect to what Cecilia was saying. It's a pity that we weren't able to visit all the countries where the project is implemented, because it's always true, but when you are in a place and you see the reality from a lower distance, you can understand better the situation. And in Senegal, it was interesting to talk with local communities to see the reality of the projects, even if it was not our activities at that time. But I think that the take-home message from my side is that we are working a lot on monitoring, not for the sake of methodologies and this kind of, but because we want really to find a way to make these kind of activities working by themselves in the future. For the moment, it's not like this. I mean, we have to work together to find a way to make it possible. But I'm confident that we will find good solutions together. And we are exactly for this purpose here together today. I hope that I answer a bit.
Yes.
Sorry for my, yes, it's 2 pages now to be translated, but...
2 pages, which I hope I can read.
Yeah.
Donc, j'ai pris plusieurs notes là. Merci Tommaso pour vos commentaires. Alors, il voulait dire que oui, bien sûr, il est là, son rôle, c'est pour voir l'impact du projet, mais aussi comment ils peuvent soutenir aussi le projet. Du coup, il voulait aussi dire que dans le film, dans la présentation de Félicité, elle avait mis une hiérarchie, mais il tient à dire que c'est pas vraiment comme ça qu'ils veulent travailler. Donc, ils essaient vraiment de connecter à tout niveau, de parler avec les communautés pour bien entendre, bien comprendre ce qui se passe pour après pouvoir assurer que les projets à la fin puissent continuer tout seuls. C'est ça après le but de ce projet. Il a dit que aussi, bien sûr, on aime toujours se concentrer sur les positifs, c'est ça la belle histoire, mais il a dit on ne peut pas non plus nier qu'il y ait quelquefois des challenges derrière, mais qu'il travaille justement pour dépasser ça. L'importance, bien sûr, c'est d'avoir un impact positif sur les écosystèmes et aussi la société. Et ça, c'est lié parce que si on a un écosystème qui marche bien, il y a la société qui suit derrière aussi. Donc voilà, ils veulent pas être, le ministère ne tient pas à être reconnu juste comme donateur, mais aussi vraiment comme participant à tout niveau du projet. Et donc voilà, donc il a réitéré le fait qu'ils étaient très contents avec les résultats de la première phase. C'est pour ça qu'il tient vraiment à suivre le projet, aussi qu'ils vont venir voir le projet dans les autres pays. Et de parler, c'est important de parler aux communautés. Je pense que c'est grosso modo ce que vous avez dit. Voilà.
Donc, tout ça, ça fait une spécificité encore de LogMe. Le donneur n'est pas au top. Il est avec nous jusqu'à sur le terrain. Maintenant, je vais me tourner vers l'assistance. S'il y a des questions brûlantes, Sarah, tu nous donnes encore 10 minutes? Oui, bien sûr. D'accord. S'il y a des questions brûlantes, vous pouvez les donner. L'UCN est là, les partenaires sont là. Les partenaires que vous êtes aussi sont là. On a tout expliqué. Ah non, il y a une question. Allez-y. Sorry, you will give you.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Ce n'est pas une question, mais c'est plutôt une contribution au regard des différentes présentations que vous avez faites.
Ouais.
Et donc, c'est pour dire juste que, bon, je pense qu'il faut que je me présente. Je suis Richard Ouedraogo du Burkina Faso. Je travaille pour le compte du SPONG, le secrétariat permanent des ONG. Et je m'occupe de toutes les questions et initiatives liées à l'environnement, à la dégradation des terres, l'agriculture, etc. Donc, de votre présentation, j'ai très bien aimé, parce qu'il ne faut pas restaurer les terres pour les restaurer, il faut les valoriser. Et donc, dans notre cas, on a travaillé pendant environ 8 ans pour restaurer les terres dégradées. Et au fil du temps, on a vu les communautés faire remonter leurs besoins les plus prioritaires, notamment les questions de revenus et autres. Donc, on a développé un autre projet qui s'appelle Accélérer les systèmes alimentaires résilients en Afrique. Et là, on a essayé en fait de rendre beaucoup plus valorisant les terres qui ont été restaurées à travers des activités qui génèrent des revenus, à travers la disponibilité des denrées alimentaires et à travers la nutrition. Parce qu'on confond souvent nutrition et sécurité alimentaire. Voilà, la disponibilité, l'abondance des denrées alimentaires ne signifie pas forcément une nutrition saine. Donc, alors, on a développé tous ces éléments. Maintenant, lorsque les communautés sentent que, par exemple, les activités génératrices de revenus prospèrent, ils tombent dans le piège pécuniaire, en fait. Voilà. Et de sorte que parfois, ils vendent même tout ce qu'ils produisent, alors qu'il faut d'abord penser à se nourrir, parce que ça fait partie aussi de la résilience. Se nourrir, c'est vraiment l'un des moyens les plus intéressants pour se prévenir les maladies. Et donc, on a développé cet aspect. Il faudrait bien penser à dire aux communautés de pouvoir consommer ce qu'ils produisent, parce que souvent, ce n'est pas évident. Et il ne s'agit pas non plus seulement de leur dire de consommer, parce qu'ils ne comprennent pas pourquoi tu leur dis de consommer. Donc, il va falloir sensibiliser, leur montrer la valeur nutritionnelle de ce qu'ils produisent comme produit et à quel moment de la journée il est important de consommer tel aliment. Donc, nous avons développé des actions dans ce sens, en passant par la sensibilisation et les formations, bien sûr, et aussi par ce qu'on appelle un dépistage de la situation nutritionnelle. Il y a des instruments qui existent, et donc toutes les communautés qu'on accompagne, on vérifie en fait leur situation nutritionnelle, et en fonction de ça, on connaît les niveaux, et on leur fait ce qu'on appelle, on va dire, une prescription nutritionnelle pour les accompagner. Donc ça, c'est vraiment fondamental et essentiel et que je n'ai pas vu ressortir. Peut-être que c'est pris en compte quelque part ou dans un autre programme, mais s'il y a des possibilités de passerelle, voilà. Donc nous, on a vraiment l'expérience pour ça. Donc c'était juste cette expérience que je voulais partager. Merci.
Ça va, tu veux
Vous pouvez le faire. Hein? No, just, I'm sorry, there I was going off in French again. No, just thank you very much for your intervention. The gentleman was explaining that he's been working for 8 years on land restoration, and he wanted to just point out that what they found that as communities start to grow food they realize they can of course sell it to help their livelihoods, but what happens is they fall into the money trap. And they then start selling everything that they've produced, which is not the point. It's important to ensure that they understand that they should eat what they produce first, because that has other consequences. It helps with their health. And so he just wanted to highlight that an important point would be to ensure that communities understand this going forward. They've also developed guidance to help communities, and also even helping to tell them what they should eat at what times during the day. But it was something that he had not seen and just wanted to point out.
OK. Là, tu fais en français et en anglais en même temps.
Non, je fais en français, tout juste.
Tu te présentes, ouais.
OK, merci bien. Moi, je me nomme Roch Panantigri, le coordinateur national de l'initiative Grand Muraille Vert pour le Burkina. Voilà, donc c'est tout juste pour confirmer ce qu'elle a dit. Nous, on a un peu suivi l'approche qui est développée dans le cadre de ce projet, l'approche meilleure. On a apprécié vraiment cette façon de faire et on est en train de cavaler ensemble pour la deuxième phase parce qu'on veut aussi l'utiliser dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de nos activités au niveau de la zone de la Grande Muraille Verte du Burkina. Donc, l'approche est assez dynamique et ça implique fortement les communautés et c'est vraiment, ça donne des résultats assez probants. Et nous pensons que nous allons pouvoir mettre à l'échelle cette bonne pratique au cas où on aura vraiment le financement adéquat. Mais l'approche en tant que telle, vraiment, c'est un outil très approprié pour prendre en compte les questions d'opportunité et le fait que les terres dégradées, ce n'est pas que des défis, c'est aussi des opportunités qu'il faut exploiter. Et nous, on veut travailler dans ce sens et nous apprécions cette démarche et on pense pouvoir le dérouler. Et nous sommes dans cette lancée. C'est tout juste pour confirmer ce qui a été dit et nous comptons toujours profiter de l'expérience de l'IUCN pour développer cela et le partenariat est scellé pour toujours. Merci.
Seems like most of you understood what he was saying. The gentleman from Burkina Faso just confirming that the work to date has worked very well. They're very happy with it. He wants to continue. He appreciates especially the fact that degraded land is not only seen as a challenge, but also an opportunity. And he looks forward to continuing the collaboration and the work in his area.
OK, merci, Sarah.
Yeah. Just to say,
une dernière brûlante. Je vais prendre une femme. Comme moi. Non, une femme en face. Avant de revenir à ceci-là. Allez-y.
D'accord. OK, thank you. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Donc, moi, c'est Lala Isha Guindo. Je suis la directrice exécutive de ADCE. Donc, je viens quand même du Mali. Donc, je vois que vous intervenez un peu au Sénégal, au Ghana, au Niger, mais je ne vois pas que vous intervenez au Mali. En tout cas, on fait partie quand même du Sahel. Ça a été non seulement la première phase qui a été bien exécutée, et je vois encore la deuxième phase qui veut s'exécuter, et puis il n'y a pas le Mali dedans. En tout cas, nous, on est des partenaires potentiels et on est dans l'éducation environnementale et l'autonomisation des femmes et des jeunes. Donc, je pense que c'est un modèle qu'on pourra bien dupliquer au Mali. Donc,
OK, c'est Madame
Traoré Lala Aïcha.
Traoré Lala. C'est vrai, c'est le Sahel. Et les pays du Sahel, c'est combien, Gilles, déjà? C'est 17, non? Le site, c'est combien de pays? Les pays du Sahel, c'est 15 pays. Nous allons aller, j'espère, je parle avec les partenaires globaux et par extension. J'avais tantôt expliqué que les critères initialement des zones, c'était les zones chaudes de l'UNCCD. Mais avec d'autres critères aussi, notamment les zones où nous avons, les pays ou les zones où l'UICN a des partenaires qui interviennent déjà dans ces zones. Et j'avoue qu'à la deuxième phase, le Mali était dans la liste. Mais après un certain nombre d'indicateurs, le Bénin et le Sénégal sont sortis. Ça veut dire que quand il y aura une troisième phase, il est fort probable que le Mali soit dans cette phase.
Oui.
Sinon, le Sahel, c'est vraiment 15 pays. Mais pour le moment, nous sommes dans 5 pays pour ce projet. Cela n'exclut pas que le partenaire, et je pense que Cécile va compléter, intervient au Mali. L'UICN aussi intervient au Mali dans le cadre d'autres initiatives.
Oui, merci. Ce que je voudrais dire, soit rapport de l'intervention, votre intervention, soit à rapport de l'intervention de la collègue du Mali, c'est que, bien sûr, comme Félicité a dit, les Sahel, c'est 15 pays. Et ça, c'est vraiment un territoire très vaste, très grand, que on ne sait pas si on peut couvrir tout avec l'OGMI. Mais ce que c'est très important pour nous, qu'il reste après la première, la deuxième phase, on va voir s'il y aura une troisième phase de l'OGMI, c'est le modèle, c'est dont on a parlé aujourd'hui. Donc, c'est ça que on pense que c'est la chose la plus importante, l'héritage.
Oui, l'héritage.
Héritage qu'on peut laisser avec notre coopération, parce que bien sûr, c'est très difficile d'intervenir dans tous les pays, dans toutes les communautés, dans toutes les localités. Mais la chose la plus importante, c'est qu'on a ces modèles vraiment de collaboration entre, au même niveau, entre notre parti, votre parti, et qu'on écoute aux besoins des communautés. Donc, c'est ça vraiment le message, je pense, pour aujourd'hui et pour ce projet. Merci.
OK. Sarah va nous chasser. Oui, Sarah va nous chasser. Je pense qu'on a débordé de 12 minutes. Si vous permettez, on aura le temps de discuter. Je vais laisser Gilles faire le closing remark.
Je n'ai pas grand-chose à dire à part merci. Merci à vous d'être restés jusqu'à la fin de l'événement et pour l'intérêt. Merci pour les questions. Merci à l'UICN pour le travail qui va continuer et qui va évoluer, on l'espère, ensemble, comme Thomaso l'a dit, avec des données probantes qui sont plus aiguillées et avec aussi un peu plus de, comment on va dire ça, j'aimerais dire de visite, disons, de Tommaso, et on espère que Tommaso et Cecilia pourront venir sur le terrain bientôt. On a ça dans les plans et on espère qu'en 2026, ça va se faire. Et Anna, on ne t'a pas oublié. Donc, en 2026, on espère tous être au Bénin ensemble pour observer le travail qui a été fait jusqu'à présent. Et voilà. Merci à l'UICN pour l'accueil chaleureux dans ce pavillon. Et merci encore à tous.
Okay, merci. Et merci à Sarah, l'interprète.
Merci à Gilles.
Elle a permis au projet d'économiser beaucoup de dollars. On va prendre une photo. Anna-Louise, take a picture.
Yeah.
Moi, I didn't Sarah, tu prends une photo.
Non, mais quand même. Moi, je
Oui, mais tu as fait le travail. Ça nous a permis d'économiser.
Oh no. Sorry. Derek, you're the one who...
Merci.